call this special meeting to order. It is let's see what time. Computer says 7:12, but I got 7:01 on August 25th. We're going to excuse the mayor. He's out of town. I will be serving as mayor pro temp to cover that. Councilwoman Peart, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And then Councilman Chase.
And good afternoon. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to bow our heads this evening. Grateful for the opportunity we have to live in this wonderful city and to enjoy the pleasure of having good neighbors, good citizens, and people that care about this city. We're grateful, Heavenly Father, for the rain that we've received as well. Pray that Thou will continue to provide the rain that's necessary for us to sustain ourselves comfortably. And we're grateful to be gathered today to discuss pertinent issues related to the city and future development. We pray that Thy Spirit might be with us, that we might be able to be mindful of the concerns and comments of others, and that we might be able to respect one another's opinions, and that we might be able to accomplish those things that are best for the city. And this we ask of Thee in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Councilman Peart, Councilman Chase. Daisy, do we have conflict counsel available for this? Okay. Did we know that, or did he not let us send an email to everyone? Got it. So the agenda, we need an approval item, approval of agenda. Need a motion for that.
I move that we go ahead and approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then disclosures and declarations of conflicts for council members and or mayor.
I'd like to disclose the fact that I own a nightly rental in the city.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I also need to, even though I'm not a council member, I need to disclose that I have a conflict on items 1 and 2 having to do with Firelight as I represent that development group.
Wonderful. Thank you. Our first action or item is a public hearing. So let's see, Heath, should we do those together? Or should we separate those? Just open the public hearing and do one, or?
Let's do separate. Do them separately.
Okay, so the first, we'll move into the public hearing portion of the council. We'll start with item C1. Public input is sought on the final plat application submitted by Sunriver Firelight for phase 1. So we're open for that. Not seeing any comments for final plat application submitted by Sunriver Firelight phase 1. We'll move on for public hearing on public input is sought on final approval of the Firelight MPDO plan and ordinance amending the city's official zoning map to designate the Firelight subject property as having MPDO zoning. And we will hear on that one at this time. Please state your name and address.
Brad Call, 330 South High Street.
Wonderful.
So can you tell us what the MPDO zoning is? How is it changing from what it was before?
Okay. Any other questions with that?
On the declarations of conflicts, if our city attorney represents the city and also represents this developer, it seems to me like whatever legal advice he's going to give to the city is going to be in favor of the developer, not in favor of the city. So How does that work?
Very good questions. So a couple things we can talk about there. That's why he's disclosed those conflicts, and he does not give counsel to the city for those items that he has conflict with. That's what we have conflict counsel for, which is Bruce Jenkins, even though he's not here. That's who we would defer to for answers for that. The MPDO zone is an overlay zone. The current zoning is R120 that was done through development agreement. And this allows the developer to cluster, move the zoning around, be able to do higher density, move, and then give open space. I mean, kind of in a nutshell. Staff, Darren, I know you're walking in kind of in the middle of it. I apologize to put you on the spot. Mr. Call has asked the question about the zoning going from R120 to the overlay MPDO. You got some insight you can give on that? Okay.
It's basically the MPO. Sorry, I don't know what question you're asking.
Can you give a little bit of explanation of what the benefit is or why they would change zoning for R120 to MPDO?
R120, you basically change that so that it gives the developer to have that large portion of the ground, to be able to cluster open spaces to build different amenities in the city in exchange for density bonuses. The density bonuses are based on the number of parks, the number of amenities that are in the city, trails, that kind of stuff.
So is the 21 that it is now?
R120.
So R120 stands for residential, one unit per 20 acres.
And that's
20,000
changing,
20,000 square foot lot. Which is
half acre zoning.
just barely under half an acre.
and that just changing to,
And that's the MPO.
So the MPDO bases everything off of that zoning. So when they get, everything starts from that. So if they have 40 acres per se, basically times it by 2, that gives you 80 acres, right? So per half acre. So all of their calculations start from that point. So they take all of their land, base it off of that, and then that tells them how many ERUs, residential units, they can have. And then they can use that, and instead of putting them on half acre lots individually, they can come in and they can put, like what we did in Trail Ridge, where you can have like a 9,000 square foot lot, because they gave space back to the city. So they provided a park and trails. That's where it comes from.
does that, do these changes allow them to put in apartments?
Yes.
So that's a big change.
Yeah, lots of options go into an MPDO.
Because I thought the original plan was no,
And there's like.
Yes.
And now we're changing. Why is that?
I don't believe there,
Yes, it's called Firelight. We never said that.
yeah, I don't think there's a change to what can go in there. Our MPDO ordinance allows for that.
So the city is allowing them, if they want to, put in apartments.
Yeah, absolutely. And this type of application, yes.
Okay, that the whole city plat didn't allow for apartments. That a recent change?
The general plan that sits right, our general zoning that sits right now is basically you're able to do the regular residential zoning, the small spot you can do right now is a 12,000 square foot lot. That's just the base zoning, but if you do an MPDO zone, master plan development overlay zone, then you can, as I say, for getting amenities, you can do a higher density. You're trading things like open space and trails and stuff.
We also allow for mobile homes.
No, we don't allow for mobile homes. Right now, we don't have a zone.
Is that a different zone, or given what they're changing, is that permit the developer to put in anything they want?
You can't, you want, but basically, you look at their MPDO on that, we submitted a plan several months ago that showed, so very specific plan that took been reviewed by the city staff. You guys, your MPDO
Do we know what, in your plan, do we know what hotels, what commercial properties? are
Yeah, so
planned?
probably, Pratt, Mr. Call, the best thing to do is there's a plan that's been submitted to the city that has all of these items laid out and they're put into districts. So you can look at the map and you can see a highlighted area that has specific uses inside that area or district, and there's a chart that goes with them. That information's been available to the public for quite some time now. So that would be the best way to get yourself familiar with what's there.
Where is this, the one for the
So it's further than the racetrack. That's what everybody refers to, but it goes south of the racetrack and to the north. But it centers on the racetrack.
on the other side of the bypass and construction?
So they own property on both sides of the bypass, on the east and on the west.
So there's other map, or there's other map that's not, tonight. So you do have time to figure it out, that's what Bruce said, basically, the fire commission. That's what I was told, and I believe the fire commission did not pass that forward. They passed it over.
Wayne,
What's that?
It's Wayne.
Wayne. Hey, Wayne, on planning commission, can you explain, do you have any insight on what took place there?
And it's the second half.
So,
They passed the NPDO, but not.
but, yeah, if you were to read our NPDO for NPDO, there's a two-step process in granting final approval. You grant the final approval, and then you adopt an ordinance saying that the official zoning map of the city is hereby modified to show this area as NPDO. That ordinance was not put in the planning commission's SharePoint folder, and they didn't have it in front of them, it wasn't published as part of the 10-day advance notice when we had the public hearing on it. So what you're here to do is to give final approval of the PDO plan with the last step, the other step of approving the ordinance, which all the ordinance says is the official zoning map of the city is hereby modified to reflect Firelight's property as being zoned and PDO. So that's the only thing that's not happening. It will happen after the planning commission has the public hearing. Final plat final plat and the final approval. And just not the ordinance.
So that information.
Okay.
Half of this.
One last question for me.
Hey,
Firelight,
audience, thank you.
as the developer, Sun River Firelight, has made the proposals. But somebody done due diligence to know whether or not they have the financial backing to see this through all the way, and not just go halfway through and say, if you don't have the money, you can't continue.
Yes. Thank you, Brad. Any other? Oh, come on up to the mic there. And Daisy, these don't appear to be on. I don't know if there's a switch or,
Don
Oh,
Everett,
there we go.
137 South Ash Street. I think this is the change that this is general note. The developer has the right to build the road, yes, the independent area provided this city has the uses proposed. Is that it, and determined, and compatibility, surrounding and uses defined of the compatibility is determined by the time of the factory. This step three reduction shall be considered a minor change in aiding the developer to gain
Well, I think you started reading that the developer could lower the density,
Increase.
not increase the density. Is that
So-
correct?
Yes.
Protect the developer from the misunderstanding that there's an obligation to build at a higher density.
Right.
We're reserving the right to develop a lower density.
Yeah, so that's saying they'll build fewer homes
They have the
than
right
more
to.
homes. They have the right to build fewer homes than what they ask for. The lower density, not a higher density.
It just sounds because this can be, he can deal with that.
Right. So if they wanted 500 homes and then they come back and says, we only want 200 homes, they don't have to ask us.
So in other words, we can't do 60.
No, we can't go above. It says less than, lower density, not more density.
I've read that 5 times over. And-
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem if they decide to make 400 homes instead of 500.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there's going to be, like, apartments that, whatever, how will this look? How will it look?
So, this is it's hard, and I don't want the audience to think that we're being I don't want to come across as short. All of this information has been presented to the city, so there is actually really good details and maps that show zones and districts where they're allowed to do it, and that's all available to the public to see. So for us to try to explain it is a little bit difficult because it's all been put out there already.
And
And it goes into those items so that you can see them. And then there's a whole book that talks about the stipulations and where they can do those items and what it looks like.
How many houses?
so that's what I know what you're going for. So the ERU, so if they have, an ERU is a home, residential home. As they build apartments, they're each an ERU. So if they build 1,000 apartments, that's 1,000 less homes they get to build. So there is a grand total number of how many ERUs they get to have.
How many?
Scott, what's that number?
It's about 4,000.
Yeah,
They can just.
they have 1,700 acres. So you take 1,700 acres and times 2, that's 3,400. And then that's right. That's right. That is. And
They obligated to provide the water.
yes, they will have to come with water from this Water Conservancy District. We'll be contracting water for them. It is not, Tocqueville City Water will not.
There's a lot of things going on in Washington. And everybody assures me there's more than enough water, but I doubt it. I mean,
Yep, very well.
I just came from a meeting. That's why I was late. Apologize for being late. We were talking about water and sewer and all sorts of stuff. So it is a big concern and we are trying to get ahead of it. So,
like, when we, in Tocqueville, the water district wanted to buy the citizens' water. And they told us that they had a right to foreclose because we had culinary water for irrigation. That's what they told us. And then I found out that wasn't accurate. There was no emergency permit to do that. So they lied about that. What is the? I'm gonna tell you the truth about the water. I mean, to be honest, I don't trust them at all. I mean, anyway,
Okay,
that's my,
thank you, Fran. Oh, I did say that. Sorry, Don. All right. Any other comments for the public hearing for item C2? Not hearing any, we will close the public hearing portion of this council meeting. On business, Darren, will you give me some clarity from public hearing on item business D2? I just want to know, I was a little confused there with it.
So to start, you get the ordinance for amending the city's official zone map. You are.
For the first half.
You're taking action.
We can make action on the first half, but we cannot on the second. right, we're going to move into business D1, discussion of possible action on final plat application submitted by Sun River Firelight. Council, you have any comments or questions upon that?
This is quite a bit of information that,
Last one.
well, the final plat application has several files that I'm looking at, Darren, correct?
Yes, and I put those in there because the documents that are required for our final plat are the same as for things that are just the main.
Okay, and so my question,
Every document in there that the application asks for.
that's what I want to confirm.
I wanted you guys to have that because planning commission has requested that.
A lot of these documents are in a language I don't understand. That's why you're an engineer.
Just so you know, I have reviewed all of those documents and I'm satisfied.
The application. Okay, thank you. I would move that we go ahead and approve final plat application submitted by Firelight, business item D1.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Item D1 passes. Business item D2, discussion of possible action on final approval of the Firelight MPDO plan, which is what we can take action on this evening. Comments or questions?
I have some concerns about the nightly rental situation. Originally, when Firelight approached us, with the conceptual, we were looking at apartments. And that has since changed to nightly rentals, which are, needless to say, have been a topic of discussion for some time prior to Firelight, and it continues to be a topic of discussion. So the question, I have to ask myself, the general plan that we currently have really doesn't mention anything about, a nightly rental area. Right now, an ordinance has to be changed in order to accommodate what Firelight wants to see happen, because our current ordinance would not necessarily allow them to do what they plan to do. So, and I know the planning commission is still struggling with the ordinance right now with respect to fitting it to see if it's for Firelight or not. So thank you.
So nightly rentals has gone through planning commission, comes through a public hearing, and basically there wasn't geared 100% for fire night. It was geared for the planning commission struggled with nightly rentals that we have based on
Residential.
garage, those types of things. And I could preserve that portion of it in the residential area. Then we also talked about because everybody fell underneath that one for the commercial, whatever. So basically, you could build a 300 room hotel, which you could rent out 2 rooms under that kind of ordinance that we had. So we went through, and that's your next item on your agenda.
Right, and I'm not focused on the next item. I'm focused on the fact that through the preliminary, through the conceptual, we have discussions, and I've been told, well, wait a minute, you'll get too deep. We need to wait till we get to the final. So we've never really had a good discussion about the fact that we've got this nightly rental that's a permitted use in this agreement. And I know it's in one specific area, and I'm getting my phones blown off the hook with people calling me and saying, what's going on with the city? Are we caving into developers or what? Now, I know that there's been discussion about what's the difference between a hotel and a nightly rental, okay? And there are a lot of similarities, okay? Right. So,
So myself, when I looked at this, I looked at the whole entire city, didn't look at just Firelight. I wanted to work for that. We're not pushing, we looked at the plan, commission came up with, Commissioner Olson went around to a lot of different RV farms to try to see how we could with that. Asked them questions, we had a lot of input from that. That was quite a bit of work, you guys, you guys. And you guys did what you wanted to do, that's fine. So that's what's on for tonight. But,
so, yeah, and when I look at the difference, you know, I know that Firelight is really making some exceptions beyond what a nightly rental is to make sure that things are organized and well cared for and everything else. I realize that. But I also realize that, you know, Hurricanes had some problems with their nightly rentals. They've got police out there, usually on weekends, dealing with nuisance calls. And, you know, so who has to pay for the police patrolling?
Right, and I get that completely. I do. There's that element, but so
A hotel is a lodge, is lodging, you know, nightly rentals is a situation where people are coming to stay and enjoy, and it's more of a tourist.
yeah, and I'm not saying that I disagree with what you're saying, definitely. So, well, no.
So, and I'm not opposed to this, but I feel like we have a survey out right now to survey the citizens of this city as to what they want the city to look like. And the results are coming in at the end of the month. We're talking 5 days. And
Yeah.
do we want to take time to understand what the city wants? What the residents.
So and we are doing that general plan, but that general plan will not be completed. Those surveys won't be compiled and put into the general plan for probably another 5-ish months, somewhere in there. So know that. That's the process we're at right now. Yeah.
While the planning commission is looking at nightly rentals, I just feel hesitant. I just feel hesitant about that one particular issue here. Now, if it does go through, then have the establishment ERU should be pretty. And I look at the Firelight, you're combining it with an apartment and a multi-use, so therefore it would be one half an ERU, is that correct?
It's single family detached. That's one.
That's one.
Okay,
It is a home. It's just the way the home.
okay, but the nightly rental that their Firelight's looking at is basically a complex that's going to be a multi-family situation.
Pool of single family homes.
Right. And that would fall under an ERU of 0.5.
It would be single family homes before it's so it would be one per.
So it would be a single family. So if they were to basically put in 100 nightly rentals, that's 100 less homes that you have to put in the city
100 off our balance sheet.
off your balance sheet.
I want to talk about just before you get too far down your list there.
Mhm.
One of the things that you brought up, and maybe I misunderstood, that you had talked about when we first started the conversation about the nightly rentals, about having to change the ordinance into Oakville City's code, right, to accommodate it. So one of the things that, just for clarity, when nightly rentals went crazy, we very quickly put it into the book, and ours was really strict in comparison to really anybody's. And so but the point of that was that we didn't take a residential area with existing homes and turn it into a commercial, right? We were trying to protect our citizens that bought a home in a residential neighborhood. And so that's how, as we built that ordinance, that's how it was focused, is making sure we maintain those residential areas. It didn't take into consideration the fact that somebody might go build an area that could be used for that. And that's really, I think, what started us down this path of trying to get it cleaned up so that, like, if we zone something or have an area that's designated for it, that makes more sense. Instead of having, like, our ordinance was very restrictive in it. You went through it. I mean, but it was completely
I was
designed
the
to.
first one to
Yeah,
get
so you
signed
went
up.
right through it. So we went right through all that, through all the work of trying to make sure we protected our citizens. And that's where I was hung up the most, quite frankly. And then as we talked about, to me, it is different. If you move into an area and you know that it's zoned for Airbnbs or nightly rentals, that's totally different than plopping one in to an existing residential neighborhood. So just know that's where our ordinance had come from, and it did need to be cleaned up. We never contemplated this type of thing.
But it's not currently cleaned up to
Not
fit
yet.
Firelight's needs.
That's fine.
I think a couple of things. Ty, you were hitting on that just right. The way that the city has chosen to regulate nightly rentals in Pocatello is by a permitting process. A lot of this annual permit that's renewed. It's issued by the planning commission, and then on renewal, if there's been no complaints from neighbors or anything like that, it can be renewed by city staff. That's how we're doing that. But as Ty indicated, that was to protect the expectation of residents. When they bought their home, the expectation would be that not necessarily houses on both sides of them would be nightly rentals. When we're dealing with a brand new development or a new area, that if everyone purchases their homes or their condominium unit or whatever it is with the expectation that they can nightly rent or their neighbors can nightly rent, then that's their expectation. Okay. And we looked at this, and I would tell you that the vast majority of municipalities in Washington County have a twofold approach. They usually approach nightly rentals in the existing developments and older parts of their town, and then they have another approach as to new development areas. Some of them you can only have a percentage of the total number of rooftops can be nightly rentals. You can go through a permitting process. But what I have seen several, and I would point out Washington City, Santa Clara City, Virgin, who I represent, they all have, and I know that Rockville has adopted an ordinance like this, that if you can allow for nightly rental developments to occur with certain requirements, that it seems to work very well. And those seem to be some of the cleanest, nicest developments because they usually have to be maintained a lot like the hotel. Grounds and exteriors are kept up very well. But the requirements generally are that the development has to have governing documents, CC&Rs, that allow it, and that it also would require that there be a single property management company that has to manage and handle all nightly rentals, that they have to have the power and authority given by those governing documents to enforce and do emergency evictions. If there is a raging party that's going to happen in a nightly rental, and they get a call from that city, from Washington City, the first thing that the property management company has to do is to say, okay, everyone needs to get out. You've breached your nightly rental agreement. So that's one thing that's important. The other thing is some of them have looked at identifying areas where these nightly rental developments can occur. That's been helpful for some. There's other cities that require that the nightly rental development have certain amenities because people do seem to come and stay there. And it could be a little bit more of the focal point of their stay, where a hotel, yeah, it may or may not be, but they, a hotel will have a swimming pool, usually will have an exercise room, and things like that. So when the city asked your conflict counsel, can they identify and have nightly rentals as a permitted use in their commercial areas only? Firelight has not asked for nightly rentals to occur in their residential areas except for these vacation villas, and there will only be 5 per several hundred homes. And it's used for marketing as like a model type thing for overnight stays to prospective buyers. When you asked your conflict counsel, he said his opinion was, in an MPDO zone, you can use a hybrid of just about any use that's allowed in any other zone. But show me, Mr. Snow, where nightly rentals is a use allowed by zoning. It's not, it's a use that's allowed by permitting. And so what was prepared and submitted to the city was a proposal, an ordinance, which is different than the one that the Planning Commission worked on. I will call the Planning Commission's ordinance, the one that's going to come before you, is the Nightly Rental Amendments 1.0. What was prepared and submitted to the city that we're talking about is Nightly Rentals 2.0. And that's not going to be here tonight, and that has to go through the process, which would require a public hearing at the Planning Commission level, their recommendation, and then it needs to come to you guys. But that ordinance proposes that there be a minimum number of units in a nightly. First of all, it creates a defined term, nightly rental development, and that gets put in the city's definition section of their ordinances. Then it says in 17.3, it says, except for nightly rental developments, this is how nightly rentals are regulated, and it keeps the exact same permitting process for everything else. And then it has, in our 3 commercial zones, it says that it is, the ordinance changes the list of permitted uses to include nightly rental developments. This is only commercial zones, not residential zones. And it's, instead of just a P for permitted, it's a PR, which is permitted with requirements. And the ordinance goes on to call for 4 different requirements. First of all, it has to have a minimum size of at least 30 units and a maximum size of 200 units. Okay. The reason being is there was some concern that somebody might have like a small parcel and want to come in and ask for a nightly rental development approval, and they're only going to do like 6 units. It'd be really hard to have some of these other requirements met. The second requirement is that any of these nightly rental developments have to have its primary access off of Tokerville Parkway. The new parkway, the idea being is that that would put them out away from town, the older part of town, where we're still regulating nightly rentals by permits. The next one was that it had to have in its governing documents requirement that everybody who nightly rents in that development has to use the same property management company that is determined by the homeowners association board, and that third-party property management company had to have an office and an on-site presence at the nightly rental development. Okay, so if the city gets any calls of a problem, city calls up, or it's the sheriff's department if they're patrolling, they call that property management company and they say, in house number 32, there's a party raging, it's too loud. You either tell them to stop, tell them that they're going to be evicted and lose. And so that they are dealing with it, and the city's not having to call up and say, okay, who owns house number 32? Who owns house number 56? You call one property management company, a single point of contact, and they have authority to abate the nuisance right then and there. meaning that they can yank, they can tell them that they've lost their security deposits. They have to leave within 2 hours is a very common property management eviction process for nightly rentals. So that's the next one. And the final one is we put in the ordinance the requirement that they needed to have some amenities, a base amenities of things like swimming pool, a clubhouse, the workout area, and it suggests other amenities, but it doesn't make it mandatory. So that's what is being proposed in the Nightly Rental Amendments 2.0. What we're suggesting, and when our 27-page Firelight MPDO plan came through the conceptual approval process and the preliminary approval process, it showed in the permitted use table for commercial planning areas, nightly rental, and it showed it as permitted in commercial planning area number 3, which is Firelight team always refers to it as the town center area. It doesn't show it as permitted in any of the other 7 commercial planning areas. That has been part of what's been approved through this whole process. Then the question came up, said, well, can we actually really allow them to do nightly rentals? We are asking for the council to approve the MPDO plan as it's written with the permitted use in commercial planning area number 3. We would probably suggest that instead of putting nightly rental along that outside of that column, that it be called nightly rental development. And we would ask that you approve it on the condition that the city adopts the Nightly Rental Amendment 2.0 before it can become effective, that we can't start any sort of development or construction on that aspect until that ordinance has been adopted. And we're even willing to have it put a sunset to it, that if it's not adopted within 6 months or wherever, then that right goes away. But we think that this is a way to deal with it. And I'm going to be frank and honest with you. I see most cities looking at this, and I understand there's some distinctions on a lodge and what rights law enforcement has to come in and do a search and seizure inside a hotel room versus inside of a home or a personal residence where a warrant might be needed. But realistically, I don't think we can say that people use a nightly rental in a nightly rental resort or development area differently than they use a hotel room. Frankly, everyone's going to come down and they're going to stay there in bigger groups, and they're going to use all of our beautiful recreational areas, whether it be Sand Hollow Reservoir, whether it be Zion's, that's the reason why people come down here, is for the warm weather and the beautiful scenery that we have here. So
Approve the MPDO.
Yes.
Subject to.
With the condition that the Nightly Rental Amendment Ordinance, and I'll call it 2.0, is approved before we start any development on that section or within 6 months. That's what our request is.
So with it not being on the agenda, and they're not able to see that ordinance yet, they haven't seen it.
Well, that ordinance has been
Staff.
drafted.
That's, we could still, right, the option would be to approve it conditional upon us revising our nightly ordinance, right?
My understanding,
Never happened, I guess, what I'm saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what if the planning commission makes a recommendation?
okay, so the planning commission, in order to change any of our land use ordinances, the planning commission has to hold a public hearing and make a recommendation. Technically, they can make a recommendation to deny the ordinance.
Right.
And then it would still come before the council to make the final decision. You guys have the governing body.
I think for staff, Darren, I'm going to rely on you a little bit. We actually don't even have to have that ordinance in place to approve something like this, because once we approve this allows them to do it in those areas. We don't have to have an ordinance that identifies that, correct? That ordinance, in all fairness, is to move forward from this point to solve the problem that we have with our existing ordinance. But with an MPDO, we could approve that and not be in violation of anything.
I'm there, because I do not know for sure. I have to have a
say. Can I comment?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
So I've seen this ordinance that you guys drafted up, or did you not draft it up? I was under the impression that the city or the planning commission makes their ordinances, and we do not take ordinances from the developer. I don't know where this came from, but we haven't seen it. I've seen it, but it didn't come from us. It didn't go through us. So somebody's making ordinances for you, and that is coming from you, Heath.
It's coming to you.
It's coming from you. You wrote the ordinance, didn't you?
Yeah, where the.
All right, listen, it's my
where the
time.
ordinance- hold on,
It's my time.
Where the ordinance originates has no.
Sure it does.
There's no rule that says it has to come from planning commission.
Do we want it to come from somewhere else besides the planning commission or the council? Do we want this new proposed ordinance to come from Firelight and his attorney that's advocating really hard right now for this? And we haven't even seen it yet as a body. We have your nightly ordinance as you corrected it to be approved tonight. We have a nightly ordinance. We already have it. We have another one to be amended tonight for your approval. But this one you're at, the one that they're asking for is written and created by their lawyer and them, not you guys. You hadn't even seen it. I know you won't be approving it, but you're talking about it right now like you're completely out of line, and you're trying to approve your MPO without the ordinance. I know, but we're discussing it right now. He just went through the whole thing. I know it's not. That's all I'm stating is it came before us. We've seen it. I've seen the new one, and we got canceled. So all I'm asking is, I think that the town or the planning commission ought to write their own ordinances with input, but not solely somebody else. So you're wanting to maybe action on this, but the MPO plan and the ordinance come together in this number 2. So I don't know how you separate, but we're concerned that our voice in the planning commission is null and void because you're entertaining it right now from your attorney. So that rubs me a little bit wrong. I don't think it's right. I'm just stating it, as we need to see it before it's even discussed or even thought about. Thank you.
In the MPO development agreement that we're voting on tonight, that's why I brought it up. So,
But you got off track, but I'm wondering how do you amend that to approve one without trying to approve the other if they're tied together is all I'm asking. The way I see it, so. We want to see it, everybody wants to see it, and I really want to know where it came from, and I just found out where it came from. It wasn't from us and it wasn't from you. Thank you.
I would add just clarity. We often see ordinances come from outside sources, often, and then we have to dissect them, work through them, and then fit them to our own. So it's not uncommon for them to come that way. The fact that it hasn't been seen all the way through, that's what I would have an issue with what you brought up. So just know that oftentimes we get ordinances from outside sources to work through.
That's our time of conflicts,
Yep.
representing conflicts.
Got it. Yes, Scott.
Scott McCall with Firelight. So I think maybe what we're looking for is an approval of the MPDO, subject to the future nightly rental ordinance, which is not going to be determined tonight. Whatever that ends up being will be retroactively active under this MPDO. And, it'll go back before the planning commission, this new one. So everyone's going to see it. It's going to go through the process as it should, right? Everyone agrees with that. We're not approving the nightly rental portion tonight. We're not asking for that. We're asking for the MPDO to be approved, subject to the future nightly rental ordinance that gets fully vetted and fully reviewed and fully voted on.
Council. What's your thoughts, Councilman Stitt?
There's lots going on here. Yeah, we're still on item 1, right?
No, we're on 2. Yeah, we're going backwards.
Yeah, I see we could approve the final NPDO plan and exclude the ordinance at this time. I think that's what we're doing tonight. The plan, we definitely have to work on, and we could say, we put a stipulation there saying we approve this and as a nightly rental gets approved in 60 days or something, we have to have that done. We can work through that. There's got to be a way to, I don't know, I'm just, how we can carry on. Cause I'd like to get this going. We've been, this has been a long process. But yeah, I'm just not sure how we go forward on this. I'm just minus the nightly rental.
Councilman Shays, you brought this up. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, I wanted to get Heath riled up enough so he would come up to the microphone and explain it to the listeners on YouTube or anyone that wants to read the minutes. Everything he said, I'm already aware of, okay? But I'm glad he got a chance to say it publicly. So to that end, we have a development agreement, Heath, that we've discussed. My concern is that column that says permitted use for that particular zone. Now, is it possible to change that to PR, permitted use with restrictions?
Was that CC on the email came from your council? I was. And all the staff was, but it was him, he said that making an approval conditioned upon the ordinance 2.0 being approved in the future was acceptable. You have to remember that your conceptual approval and your preliminary approval approved the 27-page plan that had 90 rentals permitted.
I understand that. And every time I brought it up, I was told, well, that's not the night to discuss it. It's just preliminary. It's just this. So I'm finally now have a chance but you and we had an agreement in the development agreement that we reviewed that it was going to be permitted use with restrictions. I'm asking if we can mark that column PR.
Yes, absolutely. I think that, and my question to Bruce was, is it a material change just to change that table, the word nightly rentals to nightly rental development, and change the P in column 3 to PR, which is permitted.
Okay.
And then that could be part of your motion.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Then we still need to do something. The ordinance, the nightly rental ordinance will still cover that.
Right. The other thing is I want the developer to know that, don't go out and celebrate tonight because there's still some risky stuff that needs to happen here with respect to the 2.0 ordinance.
We understand that the nightly rental is not settled.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure that was clear with everyone tonight. The other thing, I'd like to have it clear in the development agreement, the ERU for nightly rental is going to be 1.0. So,
Whoa. Pause. We're mixing things here.
Yes, Gary, that is something you and Ty, as the appointed.
That's something you and I need to do.
To work on finalizing.
okay,
Not on
because, all right, so we'll do that then on the agreement and there's no maximum, or is there a minimum here defined?
It'll depend on the new, on the, order, are you talking about the municipal equation, right?
No, I'm wondering if it's in this particular document that we're approving, the
There's
MPO.
no limit on size on there,
It's-
it's just within the town center.
Okay, all right, that's all it says there.
It's governed by the ordinance, not by that document. Yeah,
Okay.
the ordinance is not in place, so we can't.
And then what happened with the active adult communities where the minimum building area has been changed from 1,000 square feet to 900 square feet?
Planning commission looked at that, when they reviewed the development agreement, they were looking at all of the modifications of variances from the city standards. And that was one of them that was there, and they recommended approval.
Okay.
It would just be a probably small multi-family thing, because you can't build a single family thing.
Okay, so everyone's aware that it's 900. So with that in mind, I hope I haven't worn everyone out, but I'm ready for a motion.
So Gary, I would just, before you do that, I'd ask you and I'd ask Councilman Sitt, Councilwoman here, did you have any comments or concerns you want to go over?
No, the nightly rentals are my only concern. So
I would entertain a motion.
Gary, word it up. You're the wordsmith.
My phone's going to be ringing off the hook. But I understand that it's the difference between a hotel and a nightly rental and not a matter of a nightly rental or nothing. So I do understand that. And I'm hoping that the public understands that as well. So the only thing that really has to be said is,
It's on the table. I was just looking to see if I could find the table number. There's not.
Second page, where it's right towards the top, second page.
and
It's the nightly rental units right there.
so that P will go to PR.
And let's make that nightly rental units.
Say nightly rental development.
Right.
Instead of nightly rental units, and the P would be changed to PR.
I have a question. It was just said that it wouldn't go to higher density, and yet you want to go from 1,000 to 100 square foot. That's what we do.
Density is the unit, actually, so not the size of the unit. So it's not, it doesn't give you more units, it just allows us a smaller building. Smaller.
But it's on the same.
Yeah, smaller, but no more units than before, which would mean that more open space would be made by some smaller lots.
So the motion then would be made to go ahead and approve the Firelight MPDO plan, the final. I'm skipping, and ordinance amending the city's zoning map, right? And that we change the wording from nightly rental units to nightly rental development with a permit code of PR. And it would be pending,
Jerry, would you just add that that is in CPA 3?
that's in C, commercial planning area C.
3.
C3. And that it is pending upon approval of ordinance, nightly rental ordinance 2.0 proposed.
I don't think I would type that. I think if you, and it's your motion, I'm just
No.
thinking with our conversation,
So
I
we
would
need
just
to
do with the
We don't need to
restrictions
do that.
on it. Yeah, because
So the
then,
only restriction I need to worry about is right
yeah, because then it's with it, it's
Okay.
permitted with restrictions upon it.
here. Okay. Do I have to repeat myself or do you have it, Daisy? You have it?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Item D3, discussion and possible action on ordinance 2022 nightly rental ordinance.
So this ordinance is for our residential area. This is not,
If you remember, Steve,
Yeah.
that's the red line comes there.
Right.
This was gone on for multiple months at the planning commission. And we really had more than just Firelight to kind of look out for here. We also have the commercials to look at, because we realizing that a hotel couldn't have more than 2 rooms in it, that type of thing. So if you go to the page, the last page, on there, the big changes we had there on that last one.
Exceptions.
Typo there on item S2, it should say 10. 10 model homes.
The other big thing was in the green, under R, then we have an exclusion. So we're going to exclude hotels and motels and RV parks from the night rental ordinance. And then within those, zones that allow those will regulate the hotels and motels and RV.
But in RV parks, there's a certain limitation on what percentage of the actual leasable stalls or spaces or units within an RV park can be
We have to
rented.
finalize that.
That was- Yeah, that was removed. That's not in here.
No, that's not in here. It's not, it's what we did, we pulled it out of this.
Okay.
So that we could create the RV gift and roll it percentage.
Gotcha.
And we've been waiting on this for about 2 months for this to get.
Approved, so we can, yeah.
We couldn't move forward with that RV ordinance. We've got a bunch of it written, like I said, Wayne, a bunch of this planning commission members went through and did a lot of research on the RV. And it's kind of sitting there waiting. We just need to plug in how we're gonna work that. Now that's not part of this. It was part of this. It was governed by our director.
So Daisy, could you go to letter K?
Councilman Breyer, could you explain the difference for us? The nightly rental ordinance you're looking at now versus the nightly rental ordinance that we're looking at. So can you delineate the two so we can have better?
So-
We haven't seen it.
Well, first of all, we haven't seen the other one.
Okay, but can
But
you
this-
explain the difference
so
of what we're talking about?
This is our existing ordinance as of today,
Okay.
right? This is what's in place.
With change, with
Yep.
minor changes.
So well, you asked for it to go to K. Can you scroll up, Daisy? I'm sorry. I'm jumping below that. Keep going up. So we've highlighted, so if it's not highlighted, it's our standard ordinance, what we have right now.
Right.
And then you can see the changes that we've been making. So what the purpose of this was, when we developed it, it was super, almost impossible, right? Which was the goal in Tokerville, to cut it all the way down. And I noticed like on C, this was something, we added accessory structures can create multifamily zoning and shall not be used in single as nightly rentals. More specifically, a detached casita, garage, workshop, mother-in-law building, et cetera, cannot be used as a nightly rental. It's something that we didn't have when we did it the first time. So as you work through, that was what we're doing, is cleaning up our other one, our existing.
Also temporary structures. You
Yes.
can't nightly rent your RV parks in your driveway, or you can't throw up a big tent in your backyard at night.
So we found holes in it. We
Okay,
had,
so you're going over, you're updating the existing ones.
exactly,
And
and
then how does that apply to what we were just talking about prior?
different zonings. So this is going to be applicable into residential areas, not into commercial areas, and into existing. And this really came about, we have multiple areas in town where we had like tough sheds being rented out, and some other items that we need to get cleaned up that we just missed.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, Gary, you had asked for K.
Let's go back to K here. And so on K, the planning commission has determined that an annual renewal of a nightly rental does not need to go to the planning commission unless, after they review it and they find there are complaints, then it will go to the planning commission for a recommendation.
So staff
So
would
we-
review it. If there's complaints, it's going to go to planning.
Right.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's automatically, it continues. It doesn't require renewal. We didn't take that language.
We'll almost have to call them and say, hey, you need to renew your business license, these different things. So there is contact from the city, that lets them know, hey, we are still looking at what you're doing there. And if they don't renew the business license, and that's why it's permitted, not a conditional use. Because if they let it lapse, then it lapses.
Right. So with K here, we have the old process here. If you start reading K, that approval is not what is really going to be happening. And you don't have to go all the way down. I want to leave the second part of that paragraph, if the city has received more than 2 complaints. But all sentences prior to that are not required, in my opinion.
For renewal, You don't have to
Or
go,
renewal.
so you're saying you don't have to go get a new, have a new site?
No,
Reviewed,
yeah, you don't need that. It just automatically is a permit because it says annual renewal.
We would have to change, we would have to change the number of that too.
Okay, well, if we're approving this one, I'd like to take that out tonight, if we can.
Yeah.
Just exclude that.
That's kind of where this is where we need staff to pass, because there's another ordinance that we're taking that says that, it's out of the application, we're changing the application, that's what I was reading. I'm sorry, I'm not reading. I've been reading a lot of applications, and it's definitely, make that part of the recommendation, application changes too.
Oh, okay,
Because you have to reflect the change to the ordinance.
okay.
So Gary, you're striking everything. So it's going to say annual renewal or nightly rental permit, and then it's going to start right with if the city has received more than 2 complaints from neighbors. Is that what you're
Correct.
proposing? Okay.
So you don't want to, renewal process.
I think it needs to go up to each renewal application shall be approved with additional conditions or denial by the city zoning administrator. You know, I think that needs to be there, so it goes,
Yeah.
you know, so there is a renewal process, and then if there's complaints, then we can add that to it.
All right, so you recited that perfectly, Justin, so I'll let you make the motion.
So, thanks, Gary.
Why would you take it out?
Why would I take it out?
You don't want it to come before the planning commission if there's a complaint?
Oh, no,
No, that's
it will stay in there. That'll stay in there.
What's part of you take it out?
Just the top part about,
Site approval,
The annual renewal that I'm reading?
yeah, because
No, that stays.
no.
That stays in there, but we don't get involved with it no more.
that's the part,
Staff.
that's the part I'm taking out, is the
Well, that
fact,
needs to stay in there, it says from the staff, the administration will look for it.
that's what Justin's gonna motion for.
Yeah, so the renewal application will still be looked by staff. If there is 2 complaints, then it goes before the planning commission.
We need to red line that's also the staff.
Yeah, so this is basically the way I'm looking at it. If we skip, I'll just stand up, come over here. We pretty much skip down to here. This is annual renewal, night rental permits, each renewal application, we start from here. And it goes all the way through this. We just get rid of those first four lines.
There isn't a renewal application though.
So you don't want it to come renew there.
Oh, that's what the planning commission discussed.
But we
decided they were
do
gonna
want them to. We do want an application. There's a renewal, there's a renewal fee, and there's a renewal application. They have to still fill it out.
Essentially, that's the business license.
Yeah, it's a business license.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So,
And it
yeah,
also lets you know if they've had additions, you added on to it, have more rooms.
Yeah, because the application asks, have they increased the size or
It speaks for
scope?
itself, but the staff has to do it.
right.
That renewal application, that renewal application needs to be added.
Okay. So you're ready to do a motion and,
I can hack this up as good as anybody.
okay, and
So could you,
Yeah.
Can you cross out what you're gonna do?
Absolutely. So,
To everybody, make sure they're fine with what you.
okay.
Yeah.
I got one. You got pants on, you should have a knife in your pocket.
I know this was gonna be a simple process until I saw that language in there and I thought, uh-oh.
I just want to be what you guys are doing.
Well, I just heard the planning commission's interpretation of this, and it wasn't matching the ordinance, so.
Like that. It's a different way to look at it.
Oh, Rachel did, that's all that matters.
Just have everybody look at it, make sure you agree that that's where you wanted it, and then that's the official document that's signed by
Council.
Oh, do you want me to initial?
If you want, I initialed it.
You should, Gary.
So-
That way we have direction on which way to change it, because the other ones are red line.
Right, right,
This is just what we're talking about. Move this, move that.
Right.
I want a hard copy for you.
So Gary, just because now I'm super confused. I apologize. This is gonna, what are we eliminating by taking out site approval? A nightly rental permit has the duration of 1 year and must be renewed annually. That's just define what it is. For renewal, an applicant must submit a renewal application in form set by the city staff along with an updated site plan and floor plan for the lot and dwelling indicated where the nightly rental will occur is limited to. What are we gaining by taking that out?
Why would someone need to resubmit a plan, a floor plan of their nightly rental when it's just a renewal?
Because sometimes
So I think what
People change, Gary, people change things, modify.
is if they had made a change, that would be their opportunity to show.
And I'd almost say that staff has the ability to go in and do an inspection because it's amazing what gets modified after the permit's been given inside.
Okay. Well,
Like, get something passed off, if you want to amend it later or something.
okay.
Gary, you have one of these. What, like, I don't have a nightly rental. What's that mean to a person who owns a nightly rental in town? Like, is it to come back in here with a site plan and say, this is what we're doing that you did on the first application?
There's no change.
There's no change, there's no.
Right.
But if they made a change, if they added a room or if they did something different, that's where it would be applicable for staff and planning.
Well, I guess the word application is throwing me off. A business license is what is actually happening here on the renewals. It's not a separate application.
If we're going to look in that word application, we need to
Renewal.
Yeah.
You're gonna make it.
Yeah.
So,
It's a safeguard for the city too, if they change and you allow it, in your original space, you have a obligation and liability if something goes wrong in there. If you alter your.
So Gary, you're hung up on per renewal, an applicant must submit a renewal application, which we don't even have a renewal application, in a form set by the city staff along with an updated site plan. So we don't have that, so you could just pull out for renewal, an applicant must submit a renewal application in a form set by the city staff. You get rid of that, and they could just submit an updated site plan and floor plan for the lot and the dwelling indicated where the nightly rental will occur, right? Because that's what's hanging us up on what's written there.
yeah, and if they haven't changed it, they should be able to just refer to the previous.
So I guess I would defer back to staff. Do you want to form a renewal application form? And is that the easiest, cleanest thing to do? Okay. So then it sounds to me, Justin, like as is written is what's there. Nice pen work.
Yeah, I got it pretty straight. Okay, so we're going to leave it as is with the new changes.
With the proposed changes that are on.
Yeah,
highlighted on
with,
the
not the highlight, not the
No
one I just.
modifications to
So we're just going to throw this one back to Darren and say it didn't exist.
Project, what's up, your natural.
Gary, you good? You're
I'm worn out.
worn out?
I'm good.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that we approve item D3, nightly rental ordinances with the changes made in the draft. The green, yellow to green changes.
I second it. Oh.
Oh, yes.
Change from
Yeah.
100 to 10.
Yeah, from 5 to 10, and there was one more item on there, wasn't there, that one above
And that staff is instructed to create an application for
Yes, and with staff to create an application for nightly rental reviews. Yeah.
So it's not 5 to 10, right? It's 100 down to 10.
No, this is,
On this, on the S, the.
I don't have it in front of me now.
yeah, it's from 5 per
That
subdivision.
last section.
Yes, for the marketing, from 5 to 10.
Perfect.
Exceptions are model homes. So
Yeah, all the way to the bottom.
Number
That
2.
makes sense.
S2.
the exception model homes located in subdivision. It's not for me, I can have 10 touch sheds in my backyard. They're not
Well, I thought we left that at 5.
no, it was 10.
No more than I should be allowed. And it was Joey and after told me that it's supposed to be. Yeah, they went back, they went back and looked at the.
Council,
So I'm gonna respect, we start over.
In their model homes.
Okay, Daisy? All right.
In the model home.
I approve that we approve item D3, nightly rental ordinances with a change to item S2, that the number be changed from 5 to 10 model homes shall be allowed, and all the other changes as made.
A motion, I'm looking for a second. Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Item passes. That is the conclusion of our Tocqueville City Council meeting. We are adjourned at 8:17.